Hello, hello, welcome back. We have the lovely Penny Graham with us. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
So, Penny was at the last World School Summit where she talked about family learning, which was so helpful for me as I was navigating trying to homeschool the 4 children at the same time. And today we're talking about family learning on the go. So I know you are going to get so much from Penny's presentation today. Penny has an incredible way of like drawing out the learning opportunities from things, and every time she says something, I'm like, oh, that's like sounds actually really obvious, but it really was not obvious to me at all. So thank you so much for agreeing to come back, Penny. I can't wait to hear all of your ideas around family learning on the go.
Thanks for having me, Annalise. Yeah, and I think now is a good time to jump and get a piece of paper and a pencil. I had made a handout, so I'm not sure if that's going to be in the notes or in a link there. So if you're following along, that might be a good thing to grab. You can add a few things along the way.
Amazing. I'm going to hop off the screen so you can just see Penny and the presentation, but I'll be in the background if you need me. Thank you, Penny.
Okay, welcome. All right. So, as Annalise said, today we're going to be talking about family learning on the go. So, maybe you've been inspired and are dreaming about taking your children on an adventure of a lifetime, maybe sooner or maybe later. Do you want to learn how to engage in deep, real, and meaningful learning with your family as you travel? Well, this is the workshop that I'm hoping will inspire you and equip you to do just that. I'm excited to share with you some of our rich learning together as a family. So let's get into it. First of all, we'll talk a little bit about who I am and my family. We'll talk then in more detail about family learning. What is family learning and why use family learning? And then we'll go into talking about a framework for using the concept of family learning while you're traveling. And also just generally framework for family learning, and then family learning on the go. So talking about perhaps taking your family on a short or longer adventure, whether it's more locally or overseas. So who am I? I'm Penny from Flourish Homeschool. I'm a primary school trained teacher turned homeschool mum. We've just nearly finishing our 9th year of homeschooling. My children are ages 8 to 14, and we live on the land of the Wadandi Noongar people in the southwest of Western Australia, and I wish to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Although we haven't travelled extensively yet overseas or around our wonderful country, we do love to head away on adventures each year. And while camping away, generally on the coast, perhaps in the desert on the coast, up in the northwest of WA, we love to engage in learning while we're in that place and while we're together as a family. We have successfully adapted our family learning style to our travels and enjoy rich learning experiences together. So in this workshop, I will walk you through the approach that we take to family learning, briefly in general, and then more detailed, as I said, with traveling. I hope you will come away excited and empowered to give family learning a go at home, but also if you would embark on any adventures in years to come. So, as I said, my children span from 8 to 14 over a 6-year age range. And many people would ask me, how can I teach them successfully on all subjects, all the time, all at once? While, of course, balancing the role of mother and housemaid and everything else in between. My secret is I actually don't. We don't engage in every subject all the time for each child. First of all, we do subjects one at a time. So I'll explain this a little bit more, but it took me a really long time to figure this out. And I was always thinking, because I was a teacher and school environment is so familiar as a teacher or as a society, we always think about doing all the subjects at once: science, geography, history, health, maths, sport, technology, literacy, writing, all at once. And once you put them all together, And if you have children at different ages, so at different levels, and if you're using an open and go or a one-on-one curriculum based approach, program based approach, then you just run out of time and you can easily become overwhelmed, frustrated, feel like you're always behind and failing at this homeschooling thing. So it suddenly occurred to me that we actually have the freedom in homeschooling to live how we want to do and teach how we want to do. And that means for us, and maybe for you too, that we can just focus on one subject at a time in terms of the larger subjects. I'll go into a bit more detail there. What a relief. What a moment it was to feel the freedom to dive deeply into one of those subjects at a time. Well, as I said, in reality, we do keep a base of literacy and numeracy, maths and English and writing skills app as a foundation for our learning. However, we cycle through various other subjects. So the way in our family that we do it, I'm sure there's numerous ways, but we do a block. So we block for about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the interest of the topic. And it might be a topic of science or geography or history, maybe Australian history or ancient history, or maybe another science topic or technology or whatever it is. But we focus on that solely for that length of time. And it was so life-changing to make this realization because I felt like I was doing geography on one day and then history the next day, and then we were doing some science as well, and it was just all getting a bit jumbled up, and we felt a lot of pressure to try and keep up with that. We also in our family love to have read alouds that we read together as a family, and then we had so many read alouds on the go that we'd sort of forget where we're up to on this book, and we'd take forever to get through the book. So instead of spending, 3 or 4 days a week on different subjects, now we spend that all on the same subject. And we deeply immerse ourselves in the subject and enjoy the rich learning that comes from that block of time. So here is where family learning comes in. So instead of teaching each child through an individual science or history program, I would just use one resource that covers the topic in general and usually pitch it for sort of mid or the upper level of the children, and then the younger children just glean what they can from that. And in addition to that, then we would also read, as I've already said, read aloud chapter books or picture books based on that topic. Also poetry, watch YouTube videos or various other resources to go with that topic. So we're really immersing in that topic. So that's what I call family learning. It's the opportunity to engage and include children of all ages into a rich and connected learning together on a topic. So they can all engage, they can all connect, and they can all learn no matter what their age or their pre-learning in that area. And they can all progress and we can grow together. So it is possible and it is beautiful. So in a bit more detail, family learning is involving children of all ages. It's engaging with them at their level, which is really important that we actually connect with them at their levels. No point in just reading a general picture book about snakes to the 14-year-old and then they glean what they can from that, which is probably not much. They could have written the book about snakes. So it's engaging with them where they're at. So making sure you have a range of resources that you are using and exposing the children to and enjoying with the children so that they can all share and connect with something. And then you're creating a shared learning experience for the family. Now, this might be a physical experience where you go somewhere and you go and explore some animals at a bird sanctuary because you've been studying birds. Or it might be a shared experience of reading through an amazing story together where you just dive deeply into that story and follow the journey of the character. And you can share that experience and have those memories together. So why, you're thinking, all of these things, feels like in some way is another thing to add to your homeschool. You've got this idea and that idea, and why should we even bother thinking about family learning? It feels like a lot of work, and why should we do it? Well, often when we're homeschooling and we don't have a whole lot of time. So family learning is actually really quite time efficient. Instead of spending one-on-one with various children throughout the day, you can combine that time and spend it with all of them. It also builds deep family connection with from children to parents, but also between siblings as well. As I said, with that shared experiences, rather than children doing their individual program one-on-one with you, you can actually enjoy that together. And through that, you have peer learning opportunities for children, especially younger children, to learn from older children, and also the other way around. Younger children often state the obvious in some cases, and older children perhaps may not have even really thought about that in more detail. And also, with the World School Summit here this week, we're thinking about taking our homeschool on the road, and I feel that family learning is a perfect opportunity for travel, whether it's a short or a longer adventure that you desiring to take your family on. This is something you could do along the road, and I'm going to show you a bit later on some ideas to how to do that. So not all subjects lend themselves to family learning style. However, our family have used family learning for quite a variety of subjects included here. If you're keen to give family learning a try, especially at home, you might like to start with one subject that you think might be suitable. Maths can be done family learning style, although it is a bit more involved. However, history and science, geography, nature study can often be learnt in a family style. So perhaps that's a good place to start. As you take your family on adventures, learning takes on a different format. Instead of separating teaching in a one-on-one approach, you might not have the opportunity to do that when you're traveling or you're setting up camp or packing down camp if you want to do a trip around Australia, or you're in and out of accommodation if you're overseas. You might not have that opportunity. Plus, you won't be able to have infinite capacity to carry various resources to use. So family learning could be the perfect solution. And I'm going to show you how you can use all of these areas in a family learning on the go, from literacy, nature, history, geography, science, health, life skills, and maths as well. So some materials, as I said, you might be limited with what you can carry during this adventures overseas or around Australia. Both of those would be true. However, there are some key materials that would be really helpful for family learning. Journals. As you'll see over the course of this workshop, I'm going to be showing you some examples of our journals in our family. They can be used to record any family learning of any subject area. These are really valuable. So you could consider whether your child might be more suited for lined. Older children might have lined journals, or you might have blank journals. If you're wanting to do a lot of artwork in it, you'll need to consider the thickness of the paper for that sort of thing. So it's good to consider what type of journals you might take and how many you might take. I'll show you some examples a bit later on what we do for journals. Also, books. As I said, stories can be an amazing way to immerse yourself in the learning together. So consider physical books. Do you have space for physical books, or do you need to perhaps use digital books where getting something like a Kindle or using an iPad with an app or another tablet where you can read books and borrow books from digital libraries, or whether you wanted to purchase any, and whether you're going to have internet, whether you need to download them, all of those things to consider, especially when you're traveling. And stationery. What stationery is going to work for you? You'll need pencils and colors. I suggest watercolors are very versatile when it comes to journals, maybe some crayons and colored pencils, perhaps some scissors and glue as well you might be able to fit in. And audiobooks, which would be a great option for when you're traveling on those traveling days. You're redeeming the time by using audiobooks. So consider devices that you need and maybe some headphones as well. So, what's a framework now that we can think about when we're traveling? A structure to apply to all different areas of learning, no matter what the area is. So here's a bit of a general approach, and then we're going to go into a bit more detail with each of these. Stories, as I've already said, gather a variety of stories, books, audiobooks, and even some information podcasts could be helpful. Experiences, explore shared experiences and make memories together. Think about the location. Where are you? What are you seeing? What's around you? What nature is around you? What people are around you? What place? What's the landscape like? All of these things lend themselves to naturally exploring the area. Learning from an expert. Is there someone around that you can learn a skill from, or learn from, hear stories about the area or how to make something that there's made in that space, in that area? And as I've said again, journals. Take journals with you along the journey to record the learning. And travel days. On those travel days, consider what you can actually do, partly to keep the kids from fighting in the car. If you're on a long road trip, that might be helpful, but also just consider redeeming the time and using that time to really learn and have those shared experiences together as a family. Okay, now we're going to talk about each of these things in detail. Gather a variety of stories to share on your adventures. If you're traveling in a certain country, you may wish to gather books that set in that country, or visit libraries that have stories that have been written based in those towns or in those villages or cities or in that country. It's such an amazing opportunity to learn language, culture, and landmarks through stories. It's quite amazing to then go and visit them. This is a picture of our family down on the south coast. And along the south coast, there's been quite a few stories that have been set. We're actually reading a book called Bluefin by Colin Tearley that was set along the south coast. And it was quite amazing sitting on the beach, reading and enjoying that story, looking out and seeing that Southern Ocean. It just brought so much more depth and learning to the story while actually being there. Another great example for our family was when we were studying Italy, and we were studying the story called, what was it called? Red Sails to Capri. And it was a story about a boy in a village and how he would go and explore this place and discover this place, and it ended up being the Blue Grotto. And we had been learning about Italy from a geography perspective, about the different landmarks and things to visit and the top 10 tourist places to go and see things. And the Blue Grotto was one of them. And the climax at the end of the story, you discover what this boy has discovered is actually the Blue Grotto. And it was just one of those moments that was so amazing, because we had been drawn into this story through the eyes of this boy in this fishing village. And it, rather than just learning the facts of going visit the Blue Grotto, it was actually through his eyes as a local in that area. So you can see how learning deeply, connecting with stories together as a family in a location can actually really grow your experience and your learning that can be enjoyed in that place. So think about book lists. Go and research and have a look. And I think on the handout, I've given you a couple of different options for where to start for book lists. So if you are traveling to a certain country, go and find in advance. Go and find some books that are set in that. Go and find some audio books. You might want to purchase some digital books and download them and have them ready to read and enjoy. And while you're there, wouldn't it be amazing to go and actually visit those places where those books are set or that have been mentioned in the stories? And the same with audiobooks. Consider some subscriptions before traveling, perhaps a subscription to Audible, but there's plenty of free audiobooks now on Spotify and through the library access through BorrowBox and Hoopla. With Audible, one good option is just to sign up for a month and download all the ones that you want, and then you can hop off after that. And they also have a whole bunch of free ones as well. So connect with stories. Think about all the different places that you're going to go, and also things that you might discover in those places. And just think about in advance how stories can be included in your learning. Now we're going to talk about shared experiences. So seek out experiences on your travels. Embrace the culture rather than just staying in your hotel room and just enjoying the Western comforts in an Asian country or somewhere else. Embrace the culture and seek to dive into it as much as possible. Of course, look up the tourist trips that are on the top 10 or whatever places to go and see, but also seek out those places less explored through local recommendations. And as you explore these, seek opportunities to learn history and culture of that location or of those people. You can use your journal to record the highlights of the things that you discover. You might like to do that in a diary style. Encourage your children to talk about what they've done each day or every other day and reflect on that and include that in your journals, your travel journals. They may also wish to write a letter to a family member or a friend back at home to share the adventures that they're learning, those shared experiences. This is a picture of my youngest when we were graciously invited into an Indigenous community in Western Australia. My husband was in a band, and so we were invited to go and play there as a band, and they put us up for we camped on their property and warmly welcomed us and cooked up a kangaroo stew and damper and just really showered blessing upon us. And it was amazing that when you're in that place and you allow yourself to explore and really connect and really seek out the life that is lived in that place, what happens. And especially for children, I think my littlest was 3 at the time, and we were set up in an area on the property that was pretty much like a dump. And so they had old tires and old bits and pieces, and she's found this metal rod and all these offcuts for some roof tin that had nails. And normally probably it would be quite sharp and quite dangerous, but she meticulously was putting them on and off this tube as a way of playing. But it was very normal to her, and my other kids didn't seem to see that that's not what we do. We'd already been on the road for a month, so the kids just really amazingly adjust and just immerse themselves quite naturally into these experiences and embracing it, and then run around and with all the other kids and just feel like they're one of them. So follow the lead of your children. Often they would actually have these natural instincts to go and explore and to experience what is around. So when you're exploring new places, keep your eyes open to the learning opportunities that are right in front of you, where you are. All cities and tourist destinations around the world want to invite you into their stories. Keep your eyes open for these opportunities through brochures and through signs. And signs are a funny one because sometimes there are so many signs that it can be quite overwhelming to stop and read them all, a bit like being in a museum. Your children may want to eagerly run ahead and not to pay much attention, but choose moments to take time to read them aloud to your children and talk to them about what they mean. This might be an opportunity that ends up becoming something deeper, a shared learning experience, or something that would pique their interest, that would really like to explore. So after something like that, in this picture is a picture of a dugong that we found. My children didn't do anything in depth, but I've just got an example of something else that you might like to do. This is my son's journal, and he created a page on a snake that we found. And so it was an opportunity for him. If you can see there, he's done some artwork of the snake, and then he's written some information about the snake. So that could be an example of something that your children might wish to include in their journals. Another thing as you explore, especially if you have the privilege of exploring our amazing country and you get out into the outback when the stars and the sky are so illuminated and you can see stars, your children might like to explore some constellations, and they may wish to create a page in their journals a bit like this about the constellations. looking up the constellations, finding the constellations in the sky, and creating some constellations in their book. That could be something pretty amazing. Or the phases of the moon. This could be something else. I know when we go camping, the kids often take note of the phases of the moon, and we had been learning a bit of astronomy. So it was just an amazing way to be able to just solidify that learning by looking at the moon each night and watching what was happening. So I suppose if you were categorizing things, those would be in a science category. However, you can see that learning in life is very holistic. And so it's about taking the opportunity to learn about the location or about the area where you are or what is in front of you. We haven't yet had the privilege of visiting Japan, but we were doing some geography a few years back on Japan. And so this is a page that my son created. So he wanted to create some fact cards there, and he had a map there that he included and kimono there that he decorated, and he wrote some other facts. And on the other and he was particularly interested in cars at the time, so he liked to look at car brands and include them in his journal. So this could be something which would fall under the category of geography. But once again, I'm trying to explain to you how beautiful it is to be able to have opportunities for the children to create pages in a journal that becomes their journal for that season of that travel time. That could be a bit of science or astronomy or anatomy of an animal, or it could be something about the country or the area in which you are in. Another example is my daughter, when we were doing Asia, she loves to cook. And so we had been creating feasts for our Asia studies. And so she would include a recipe in her book here. That was part of something that we did. And she also found out about Mother Teresa and her work in India. So she wanted to research that and write a little bit about that in her journal. So you can see by thinking about your actual specific location and how that's really valuable to the learning that's right in front of you. So think about asking your children and keeping your eyes open to see what excites them and what encourages them. Starting with museums and cultural centres is a great place, and encourage your children to ask questions at those places to staff and volunteers. Ask more, learn more about those. Once again, in their journals, they may wish to do a diary entry as to their trip to a particular place, that museum or a cultural centre that they found interesting, or a letter back home, or a little video to show someone back at home. In Australia, as we travel, it's great to seek out and research and make a point of learning about the history of our beautiful lands, the Indigenous history and also the European history, and finding out about the name of the place, who named the place, what's the Indigenous name, what is around that place that the Indigenous people used for food, or what sort of activities did the European people do when they came there to settle that area. There's so much to be learnt, and as you go from location to location, keep your eyes open and be thinking about each of those places. And perhaps you might like to create a checklist or a list of questions on things that your children or you may wish to learn. And I think as parents, if we are fascinated and interested and curious, they will follow. But a lot of the time, their curiosity is usually quite fresh and excited compared to ours. So go along, be interested with them and learn with them. In your journals for a location, that might be a great opportunity to draw a map about the area, or retell a story about something that you found or heard about, or perhaps some interesting information about the people who lived there. There's so many things to include when you're considering about your location. Learning from an expert. So seek out opportunities to learn from an expert in the place where you are with whatever their expertise is. One way in a foreign country is to explore is staying in a private home rather than sticking to the traditional major hotels or tourist accommodation. This could be an incredible opportunity to ask questions about their life, observe daily culture, and experience their food and how they live. This would be a great thing to record in a daily transcript of, the day in the life of a person from this place. Also, look out for any local workshops that you might wish to participate in for some deep, authentic learning. So, I can't wait to travel one day and do a cooking class in Thailand because I love Thai food. So, think about those opportunities. Information centers and specific places, art galleries, open art studios could be a great way to find an expert. Ask them about their art. What inspires them? What techniques do they use? What's their audience for their art? Perhaps you might even get the opportunity to create some art with them. You just never know what happens when you seek out opportunities and ask questions. Create curiosity. If your child is interested in a particular place or something they have observed, encourage them and empower them to explore that further. Here's a picture of my boy, and we had actually been reading a lot about the shipwrecks off the coast of WA. And in this photo, we are camped on one of the coasts that had a lot of shipwrecks. And we've been learning about the different artifacts and different things that they would find. And we'd been watching some videos at the local shipwreck museum for people diving and finding all sorts of things. And my kids were fascinated. And Hudson was very excited when we were walking along the beach and he found this old bottle. And he thought immediately, it must have a story. It must have come from a ship. I wonder which ship it came from. So I was able to help him. We actually took a photo and we took it in to the museum because the shipwreck museum wasn't far from our place. So we took it into the shipwreck museum and we asked them about it. Unfortunately, the volunteer or staff member there wasn't as excited as we were about it and said, "Oh, you'll have to go and see the curator, but here's an email address. You can write an email." So we went home slightly discouraged. However, once I was able to help him send the email to the curator who explores this type of thing with some photos and detailed photos, he was very excited to reply to Hudson. So Hudson had a response and they went back and forth. And unfortunately, it wasn't a significant artifact that would be potentially included in the museum as Hudson had hoped. However, it was an opportunity for his curiosity to connect with an expert in an area in which he remembers to this day. And he has that connection back and forth through those emails and the excitement of the curator being able to enjoy Hudson's curiosity and interest. So seek out these opportunities and really support your children. Perhaps in a foreign country, it could be a little bit scary to do that, but really seek to support them to pursue opportunities from an expert. And you can always reflect on this in a journal. And I think in this journal, I don't have it with me, but he did draw a picture of his bottle that he found and where he found it and what he thought it might have been. So that's a great opportunity and just deep learning and learning together. So I've been talking a lot about journals, and now I'm going to show you a few more. I've already shown you a couple of examples. I'm going to show you a few more journals. So what can you include in your journals? Well, if you're thinking in terms of subject areas, then you can think literacy. You could retell stories. You could write a diary entry style. You could write some factual information that you find about the places, the people, or the animals, or the landscape, or anything that you see along the way. I've got a great example here of this is my boy's travel journal, and each day I try and most days, not each day, doesn't always happen, but we try and write a little bit about what they did in a day, and the younger ones draw a picture. Usually they start by drawing a picture and writing a little caption or getting someone to write a caption. But he has drawn this picture of him riding down the dunes, which is one of the things my kids love best when we go camping, and a bit of a story about what we did, where we were and what we did. So it was a great habit for the kids to get in, is usually over lunchtime, or if it's the heat of the day after lunch, or while I'm cooking dinner or something around the campground, to pull out their journal and include something. Now, in this picture here on the screen, we've got some nature journaling. So nature notebooking, nature journaling is just so easy, especially if you're traveling around Australia. There's nature everywhere, and being able to find something in the local area and have a go at painting and finding out about that. This is another example of nature journaling, and it's where we were observing the birds around us and having a go at drawing them. So we'd find the birds and then we'd look them up in the little bird guide and identify them, then have a go at drawing them and talking a little bit about their habitat and behavior. Maps are another great thing that you can include. And as I said before, if you're thinking about location, including maps in your journal. History and geography notes of the landscape or of the people or of the history of stories that have gone before. Your children may love to draw or paint, so including pictures, especially for younger ones, is a great way to include in their journal. Pictures about anything, what they did that day, where they went, who they met, what they saw. I've talked about nature journaling. And explanations. They might have gone to a workshop where someone has explained how to weave, say, a basket weaving workshop. They might have remembered the steps involved with that, and they might want to include that in their journal as well. And just some keepsakes for various things that kids might have had, a ticket for this museum or a flyer here or a brochure there, something that was exciting for them. And these will become such precious journals that they will be able to look back with fondness and remember those adventures that they had together as a family. So travel days, whether you're in the car or on an airplane, time traveling can account for much of your adventures. One way to keep the peace or redeem the time is to plan some learning. So audiobooks, as I've said, podcasts can be a great idea. As I said recently, we were studying astronomy, and the kids were quite fascinated about the Apollo missions, particularly Apollo 11 and 13. So we were able to listen to a great podcast, The Short History of Podcasts. And after the podcast, my son decided that he wanted to make a comic strip about that. So we used the traveling in the car to listen to the podcasts, and then he wanted to do this in his journal. So this would technically be science or perhaps literacy or a bit of both, but he just thought it was a bit of fun, and he loved coloring. It took a long time for him to do, but he had to retell the story in the order. So it was history, it was literacy, and then it was mapping out as well with some maths. He had to obviously work out the boxes, and then obviously some art in the way that he colored it. So you can see that everything is just so holistic, rather than compartmentalizing into how am I going to teach all these subjects all the time while I'm on the road. A lot of things can be included together. Another idea is to create a playlist. So I've got down the bottom morning time, which is a Charlotte Mason approach to exposing children to truth, beauty, and goodness. And it usually is about just immersing them in these things. Often it's poetry or songs or memory work. And creating a playlist can be great because you can put a podcast on. Say, for example, you saw some echidnas on the road when you were traveling. You might like your kids, I thought of echidnas because I just saw my kids' echidna page, write some facts about it, find some information about it, and then find a story about echidnas or a podcast about echidnas, put that on a playlist, or a song about echidnas, put that on the playlist, or a poem. So you can create playlists to play in the car for like a morning time style for anything that is relevant to where you are. It might be a place that you're exploring, or it might be an animal, or it might just be your opportunity to learn some things. Perhaps there's some poetry that you really would love to teach your kids and you just don't get round to it. Maybe traveling is a great way to do it. great time to do it too, because you've got more time. Perhaps you could just record yourself, the children, or find a podcast or a recording of a poem or a couple of poems you wish to learn, pop it on a playlist, and when you get in the car, you can do that. Same thing with songs or memory work. Could be songs, or it could be you could include some maths in there. You might want to do some times tables or addition facts, months of the year, days of the week for little ones. Creating a playlist can really combine all of these type of things, and you can include that learning together in the car as a family. Or if you prefer to do one separate ones that you don't want to listen to perhaps a slightly irritating version of times tables, then you could use the headphones in that moment. But it can be a really great way to make almost like a soundtrack to your travels by choosing a song. Perhaps everyone in the family would like to choose a song each that they love to put on that playlist, and a poem each that they put on that playlist. But they can also enjoy that together and enjoy listening to those things together as a family. And it also, as I said, keeps the peace, keeps the learning going, and it passes the time, and it creates that shared experience. So we're nearing the end. I hope you have had some inspiration here. I'm just going to pop back through our framework for family learning. So stories, gather stories, audiobooks, podcasts on all sorts of topics of interest or location specific on where you are or what nature is around. Experiences, shared adventures, and memory making together as a family. Consider the location and what learning can be discovered in that specific location. Perhaps you want to learn from an expert. Use journals. Even as adults, that might be a great idea to all have a journal. If it's a shorter adventure, you might just take one journal. But if you're going for a longer time, you might have journals on the go, or you might just work through create another journal just to be able to record learning and just look back fondly. And on those couple days, redeem time. So you might be thinking, this sounds amazing, but I'm trying to think about how I'm going to feed my family while traveling around Australia while having such limited space. Don't even know how I'm going to fit all my clothes and my shoes in. There's just so much. I was just going to just whack it together and see what comes of our holiday and figure out learning on the road. Yes, of course. Go. Yeah, that's where I would be thinking too if I was about to embark on a big trip. Hopefully we will soon. But I also want to acknowledge that it is an effort, but it is so, so worthwhile. Some families do register for distance education. And if you're traveling 6 or 12 months, I hope that I've inspired you to have a go at family learning instead. On my travels, I have seen many families getting their schoolwork done through distance education and then had to drop it off at the next post office. And my kids are out there enjoying themselves, enjoying the nature, enjoying time together as a family and exploring. And I just feel sad for children that I see in caravans doing work, getting their schoolwork done, and then missing out on just the living and the life and the learning that happens outside. So consider that if you're not homeschooling your children in school and you're thinking about going and exploring, consider very carefully whether you want to register for home education or distance ed, because it's very, very different. There's a lot of work through distance ed, a lot of time that you would have to spend doing that and foregoing some of these wonderful opportunities. Okay. I get that it can be easy doing distance ed, but it also can come with extra pressures as well. So consider and plan for deep learning opportunities through family learning. Journals are great to look back on and celebrate. And if your children are in school you're taking them out for an explore and then you're returning to school, maybe you can have a weekly or monthly Zoom meeting into your class and the children can share what they're doing or create videos to share back at home. There's so many amazing learning opportunities that we need to embrace when we go away traveling rather than signing up for distance ed. So trust me, you will enjoy the best of your kids on the journey, and the best thing is done together, and shared learning experiences brings deep connection and deep joy. I think if you were going to do this, you won't want to come home again. You just want to keep going. So I hope I've inspired you today, and I hope you have been seen some great ideas to employ in your homeschooling, whether you are about to travel or not. Perhaps you might like to try something in your home-based homeschooling as well.
Thank you, Penny.
Welcome.
I was just about to ask if you support people to do this. So tell me about this screen.
So I do some coaching, one-on-one coaching. If anyone's interested in anything I have to say and love to learn more, they can sign up for a one-on-one session with me. And I also have a family learning guide, Rocks and Gems, for sale on my website. So I've got a couple of coupon codes and discounts there as well.
Thank you. So generous, very generous discounts, Penny. Thank you so much. You said, I hope I've inspired, and I'm sure you have. I know you've inspired me. Every time I speak to you, there's something that I get, at least one thing, but definitely more than one most of the time. What really always sticks with me is how effortlessly, even though I know it's not effortless, but that you link what you're reading to the places and draw that out. That always really sticks with me. How do you find the resources to read? What is your process to find that, to find the right things, especially things that span ages?
Mm-hmm. Do you mean read aloud books with the children as a family?
Yeah, like you mentioned, you were reading one about Italy, and then you were doing that, and the same with the Southern Ocean. I don't remember the names.
Yes. Yeah, so I do look at book lists. I spend a lot of time doing that. So there's a couple of book lists which I've put on the handout as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Erin from New South Wales does a wattle gum. Am I saying it right? Wattle Gum Books. So she's done an amazing job with collating and collecting books into categories, and she'll tell you whether they're in print or out of print. And she actually has a wonderful library you can draw on as well. And Anthony has some great things, Living Book Press. He's been reprinting things. So that's always a great spot to come. And I think you can actually filter by subject area. So if I'm looking for a book on snakes, for example, I might go on to a couple of book lists first. And the Ambleside Online also has some good classic, sort of more Charlotte Mason style book lists. But then, and the Read Aloud Revival, Sarah Mackenzie also has some categorized books. So that's kind of where I start. But then also I do a bit of Google, and I'd love to one day put together a list. But we're currently studying Africa, which has been amazing and so exciting. Everywhere we study, the kids just want to go. So bring on the world school travel.
Seriously. So they get very easily excited. I think we were watching like a cooking show. They're like, we have to go there. I'm like, oh my gosh, this list is just getting longer. I'm like, yeah, great. Like, we're going to be traveling till I'm like 400.
But I think that's really exciting, because what you're instilling in your children is a love of learning.
Yeah, it's great. It's it is. It's really good. It's
no matter what you learn, or what you're learning about, or which place you're learning about, they want to go there and explore and enjoy that. And I just think, wow, that's job done. In some ways, they just got that curiosity and excitement. So I think that's a big part of it.
And I think books add an extra richness, which we haven't done. I really haven't done that at all. So thank you for inspiring me to do some research there.
Yeah, no, I just think it brings so much. We've started doing books quite heavily the last couple of years, just particularly living books, just to draw things out. So much more culture, language, and just picking up little nuances between, how the parents and the children interact. And at the moment with Africa, we're doing quite a few. We've got an audio book on the go and a book, and they're actually both autobiographies that men have written about their childhood in different parts of Africa, and the stories are amazing. And what's so exciting is when you hear about those places or something particular. For example, we were reading about Sudan, and we heard about this story of the lost boys of Sudan and how these boys fled during the mid 80s into the bush and ended up running away and ended up finding refuge in Ethiopia in a refugee camp. Anyways, there's a long story about this Lost Boys of Sudan, and we'd heard about it. And that was so exciting because then we actually started listening to an audiobook that had been recommended, and it was that story. And it took us like 3 chapters, and the kids are like, oh, it's actually that story. And so we are now listening to it. We sort of heard about it in a factual sense, in a few paragraphs, but now we're actually living that story and all the adventures along the way. And you just pick up on language and culture and what they endured and what they suffered going through the desert and everything. It's just amazing. Just the learning is so deep, and it's across those ages. Like all the kids enjoy learning and listening to that, so books are
okay,
powerful.
thank you. Noted. That's the mission now. Thank you very much. And I think I have to do audio. I can't read aloud. That drains my battery like five minutes I'm done.
Audio's great, especially I put it on like while I'm cooking lunch or washing up or something as well, so the kids are occupied and they're engaged in the learning while I'm still actually doing things.
Yeah, it's a good way of making them little zombies while you need to get things done.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much, Penny, for your time and your expertise and the way that you can help parents make this so much easier. I think sometimes we really overcomplicate it, and I love your simple approach where you're still ticking all of the boxes, but like I said, it just feels so much more effortless than like trudging through work to do. So thank you for sharing all of this with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I don't know if there were any questions along the way, but if anyone has any questions in the replay, just pop them in the chat and I'll be, more than happy to answer anything.
Yeah. Just a few comments saying like how great it is. So I can't see questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Penny. I really appreciate you so much. And guys, check out this deal for this month because this is very generous. As you've seen, Penny knows how to make family learning fun. So thank you very much.
Welcome. All right.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.